The defending champs get a huge win, and the King Rat leads the way. We talk about all that right now on Locked On NHL Game Night.
When that final horn sounds, you know it's time for Locked On NHL Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. Prepare to experience game day reactions like never before, only on Locked On NHL Game Night. Your team every day.
Hey, hockey fans, welcome to Locked On NHL Game Night, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thanks for making Locked On NHL Game Night your place to get a recap of the night in the NHL. We are available 7 days a week, wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, an LA Kings fan on the West Coast. He is Shukri Wrights, a Boston Bruins fan on the East Coast. Together, we are here to discuss all the goals, saves, big moments, and stories from the night in the Stanley Cup Finals. Shu, a critical Game 5 with the Oilers and the Florida Panthers tied at 2 games apiece coming in.
And you know what's funny about that statement, Eddie? The word critical. I want all of you, listeners and viewers, wherever you may be, keep that word in mind, critical, because I'm going to be bringing that word up constantly throughout this episode and throughout this program, because there are some things that need to be said on both sides of the ledger. And man, what a show tonight. And also what a disaster it was in Edmonton.
Well, let's get to it. In the opening period of game number 5, I thought the Oilers might have been a little bit of the better team for about the first half of the period, but then things would change about the halfway point with the Panthers scoring first and then being the better team for the last half of the first period. But they would get on the board with not one, but 2 goals. Brad Marchand off the center ice faceoff takes right down the middle, splits 2 defenders, and scores to give the Panthers a 1-0 lead. And then Florida makes it 2-0 with a late goal from Sam Bennett, his 15th of the postseason. I believe it's 13 or 14 of them on the road. I'm losing track. There's so many of them.
Yeah,
but the
14.
Cats are up 2-0 after 1, and the Oilers had just 3 shots on goal in the opening period, as Florida has been the better team throughout the series in the first periods.
Any sign of any sort of, lull from game number 4 was quickly erased. And frankly, Brad Marchand showing yet again, age is nothing but a number. And here's what's even more incredible. Brad Marchand and Sam Bennett became the first teammates in 52 years to score at least 5 goals in the Stanley Cup Finals in the 6th set overall. And by the way, the last time that it happened was Frank Mahovlich and Yvan Cornier with the Montreal Canadiens in 1973. How do you like those apples?
Yeah, those are some classic Montreal Canadian names for sure.
Yeah.
On to the second period, we've seen the Oilers come back before, obviously, in these playoffs. In the second period, though, no answer, at least at that point. Now, they did have a couple of golden opportunities with a couple of power plays in close, back-to-back. Could not score, though, on either of those man advantages. An impressive penalty kill for Florida. So only the second scoreless period so far in these Stanley Cup Finals. It was the first scoreless period in regulation. The only other period we had where there was no scoring was the first overtime in game number 2. So very rare. We talked about it on our previous show that not only had this series been tight, but high scoring as well, but no goals in the second period. So still 2-0 Florida going into the third.
And you know what's amazing? This has been a series of adjustments, period by period. And this second period, I thought that this was going to be the period where the Edmonton Oilers were going to ultimately begin to find their footing after completely getting blindsided in that first period by Florida. But what I thought did happen was that Edmonton played angry, and they played angry in that second period. Whereas when I say the team played angry, it doesn't mean necessarily that you saw it on the scoreboard. No, they played with resolve. They played with a certain level of aggression. And you saw during that second period where they said, we are not making that same mistake again. And the third period was quite the story.
Well, again, we've seen the Oilers come back. So look, they get the next goal. It's a 2-1 game and the building's alive. Who knows what happens? But maybe, I don't even think maybe, one of the critical goals scored, I think when it's all said and done, Brad Marchand in the third period, his second goal of the game, makes an amazing move around Jake Wallman and then a little backhander through Calvin Pickard, reminiscent of his overtime game winner on Stuart Skinner earlier in the series. And now the Panthers are up 3-0. And yeah, they blew a 3-0 lead, but that was with a lot of hockey left. Now we're in the third period, and you got to believe that's going to be enough for Marchand. 10th goal this postseason, 6th of this finals, and his 13th career Stanley Cup final goal. Sick move, clutch goal performer, Brad Marchand.
I got to give credit and criticism where it's deserved. Brad Marchand still got the wheel, still got the moves to make defensemen look bad. And then also Edmonton, the story of the night, and I'm saving my firepower for the segment where we talk about the Edmonton Oilers. Critical mistakes, especially on the defensive end. That defined the Edmonton Oilers tonight. That defined them during this third period. And frankly, there's going to be a lot of questions and a lot of wondering going into Game 6 about where are the Edmonton Oilers defensively, because, oh boy, Game 5 was bad. It was really bad.
So again, 3-0 after Marchand's second goal of the game. Now the Oilers did come right back. Connor McDavid finally scores his first goal of the finals to make it 3-1. Panthers return the favor. Sam Reinhart gets a goal. Now it's 4-1. The Oilers would pull Calvin Pickard with about 5 minutes left because they're down 3 goals. Why not? Corey Perry scores with the extra attacker. His 10th goal of the postseason made it 4-2, but Eetu Listerainen would ice it with an empty net goal, and that would end the scoring. No scoring in the second period. We had plenty in the third, but in the end, 5-2 the final. Panthers win it, and now they lead the series 3-2, and they are 1 win away from repeating as Stanley Cup champs, heading back home with a chance to wrap it up in Game 6.
I mentioned in the previous episode that I wasn't worried about the Florida Panthers' mental fortitude, and I stood by that. Tonight, I was shown yet again why they are the defending Stanley Cup champions, who are now 1 win away from repeating as Stanley Cup champions and becoming the first team to repeat as Stanley Cup champions since, drum roll, the Tampa Bay Lightning in 2020 and 2021. So what you saw tonight was an absolute clinic at the hands of the Florida Panthers, not just from Brad Marchand, who obviously was the star of the game, and as well as Sam Bennett, but then also Sergei Bobrovsky, who was huge. Yes, he benefited from the defensive clinic that Florida put on, but Bobrovsky, I thought, had a huge bounce back game, and here we are. And as well as now, in terms of the Edmonton Oilers, I think they have major questions going into game number 6. Who is going to get the start in net? And as well as what type of adjustments will the Edmonton Oilers need to make in order to stave up an elimination and push this series to the ultimate brink of game number 7 in a Stanley Cup final?
Well, historically, what does it mean when a team wins Game 5 after the series is tied 2-2? Well, the winner of Game 5 historically in the postseason has won 78.8% of the time, winning that Game 5 after the series is tied 2. Specifically in the Stanley Cup final, tied 2-2, the winner of Game 5 wins the series 73.1% of the time. How about recent history? The last 4 winners of Game 5 when the series has been tied 2-2 has gone on to win that series. That would include the Blues in 2019, the Penguins in 2017, the Blackhawks in 2015, and Chicago once again in 2013. The last time a team lost Game 5 when the series was tied at 2-2, but came back to win, that would be Shukri Wright's Boston Bruins against the Vancouver Canucks in 2017. So it's been a little while. 2011. So it's been a little while, but recent history and overall history seems to indicate that the Florida Panthers have won a very, very big game taking game 5 in Edmonton over the Oilers.
They did, but I will also go as far as to say, in terms of the opposite side, the Edmonton Oilers, that's the kind of history that they're up against. And I tweeted about it on Twitter at Strictly Rights, where I said that the kind of history that the Oilers are up against is a team that in which that they lost game number 5, and you still gotta win 2 to not only win the Stanley Cup, but you gotta do it against the defending champions. That's a tall mountain, and it hasn't been done since, as you just mentioned, the 2011 Boston Bruins that came back from 3-2, not only just 3-2 down, but they also down at 1.20 in the series against the Vancouver Canucks. So history is not on their side, but it's not impossible, but it has been done before. But that is a steep hill and a huge mountain that the Oilers are going to have to climb.
All right, up next, we'll talk more about Brad Marchand's big night, and we'll check in with the host of Locked On Florida Panthers. That's next on Locked On NHL Game Night. The NBA Finals are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there has never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and during the action with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. FanDuel have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Which players are showing up in the biggest moments, and how could tracking their trends help you build your next big bet? What would it look like to combine live prop bets mid-game based on how the action unfolds? If you got a read on who's heating up, why not back it up with a same-game parlay? You could get a $200 bonus bet to add the excitement if your first $5 bet hits. New to FanDuel, it is the perfect time to sign up. Head over to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, let's get more into the winning side of this one. The Florida Panthers with a huge 5-2 win in game number 5. Let's not waste any time. Let's get a report from our friend, the host of Locked On Florida Panthers, Armando Velez.
Don't let the scoreboard fool you. That was a defensive clinic by the Florida Panthers. What is up, guys? Armando Velez here from the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, here to quickly break down the Panthers' 5-2 win over the Edmonton Oilers in Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Final. And the Panthers took control of this game with 11 minutes left in the first period as Brad Marchand scored on a breakaway. They did not allow a shot on goal for the rest of the period. Sam Bennett added on to the Panthers' lead. The Panthers were able to get in on their game as the second period was a very quiet period from both teams. And although the Panthers extended their lead, the Edmonton Oilers kept fighting a little bit, but the Panthers hung on and are now one win away from lifting the Stanley Cup for the second straight season. We're going to break down all this and more on tomorrow's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Your team every day.
All right, thanks to Armando Velez, who's done a great job all season and postseason long with reports on the Florida Panthers. So the big question we were talking about in our previous show, would the Panthers be able to bounce back from blowing that 3-goal lead in game 4? And you and I both believed that they were more than capable of coming back. I didn't think they would have any hangover from that loss, as disappointing as it was. Certainly they proved it. They showed the veteran team that they are. They completely turned the page and get a huge road win. And it started off with a strong first period. And now that's 10 road wins this postseason for the Florida Panthers, which ties the NHL record. So they are not afraid of going into hostile territory and getting a big win if necessary. They certainly proved that in game 5.
When your team goes to a sauna, or should I say a steam room, as an entire group, just to release some steam, no pun intended, that tells me you're going to be okay. You tell me you're fine. All right, we lost. We're just going to go in the steam room, have a conversation. You know, nothing to see there, no big deal. And in fact, they were talking about it during the pregame. And I was like, if you're Edmonton, you should be worried. Because if you're that relaxed coming off a bad loss, as the Florida Panthers were, and the Oilers are back home, they're confident, that in itself should tell you Florida is not coming into Edmonton to mess around. And that first goal by Brad Marchand was the kind of goal that just makes you like, oh my God, he just undressed two defensemen. He made them look like fools on the ice. He made them look bad. And I'm like, oh my God, Mama Hick, there goes that man again. There goes that man. Brad Marchand, the same man who apparently he was so banged up. He was so hurt, coming back from multiple injuries, no less. He was pretty much a shell of himself with the Bruins. And now he looks like he's a second coming of Mario Lemieux in these playoffs. If you know, you know. If you understand it, you understand that. So the first goal was just like an absolute beauty, but then to see it again, I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. And what's even more incredible about Brad Marchand is this. The thing that I find to be even more amazing is the fact that out of Marchand's 10 goals in these playoffs, 6 of the goals have come in these Stanley Cup finals. I mean, there was a graphic that I saw in which that Brad Marchand's record in games in which that he has scored in his career in the Stanley Cup finals, he's only lost exactly just one game. Just once. And that goes to show you, not just only in terms of the dominance, but in terms of the effectiveness when he elevates his game to that next level and on the highest stage there is in the NHL. And for me, when you talk about Brad Marchand, and obviously he's been hated on for years and so forth, he's been criticized fairly or not, but what you've seen during these playoffs, especially in the Stanley Cup Finals this year, has got to have left you thinking, and not only thinking, but feeling he is unquestionably going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. That in itself was actually answered tonight with this performance. And no matter what happens in the rest of the series, whether if it ends in Game 6 or if it goes to a Game 7, but Brad Marchand and what he just accomplished tonight was nothing less than absolutely legendary stuff. We're talking about names that we haven't heard from since the legendary 1970s Montreal Canadiens teams. That says something.
Yeah, Brad Marchand has been a huge acquisition for the Florida Panthers, no question about it. And he was pretty quiet, and I mentioned it after we recapped Game 4. Yeah. He was the one player for me that really had a lot of jump tonight. I mean, it was obvious that he had legs, and it seemed like a lot of other players didn't. And it was a quick turnaround, and pretty surprising. You mentioned 37 years old. He's not a spring chicken anymore, but he was. I mean, he from the opening faceoff, he was flying around, and you're like, wow, Marchand is coming with it tonight. And that was before he even scored any goals. So he certainly again had the jump. And I talked about the depth of the Florida Panthers, that over a 7-game series or maybe a 6-game series at this point, that it would show itself. And I thought it did in this game. The third line for Florida has been huge for them all postseason. Huge in this game. Marchand had 2 goals. Eetu Listerainen capped it with the empty netter. Anton Lundell had an assist as well. 5-point night from the third line for the Florida Panthers. So I thought the depth from them did show itself in this crucial game. I mentioned it earlier. The penalty kill I thought was huge for the Panthers. And even though statistically Florida's power play has actually been better than Edmonton's, right? When you have 4 guys on the ice defending and McDavid and Draisaitl out there, it's hard not to feel like that's a very dangerous situation for you to be in. But I thought the penalty kill for the Panthers came up absolutely huge in this one tonight. They didn't let the Oilers get back into it in the second period when they had those huge 2 power play opportunities.
One of the things I was looking forward to watching in regards to the Florida Panthers was the penalty kill and how they would play defensively. And it was just absolutely perfect. You cannot find a single flaw. I mean, if there are people that are going to be out there, they're going to say, well, I mean, the Oilers scored 2 goals. Outside of you can't find fault with the way that the Panthers played defensively, but especially with the penalty kill, which at times in game number 4 was under siege against Edmonton. And I thought that, in my opinion, that if they were going to get right in this series or in this game, the penalty kill was going to have to step up, which it did. Defensively, that they were going to have to get a lot better. But also the goaltending, the performance of Sika Bobrovsky, and I got to give him his flowers. because as much as we talk about the defensive play of the Florida Panthers, and I give you credit, Eddie, on your point about the depth that the Panthers have, especially with the third line and fourth line tonight. Oh my God. With that, you also have to include that Sergei Bobrovsky has been huge. He made big saves when he needed to make those key important saves in moments in this game. But I also think that you got to give credit to Paul Maurice. He had those guys ready. And you talk about the legs being ready to roll. Just last point real quick. I thought the energy from both teams early on was excellent. I thought, considering that prior to tonight, they had played maybe one or two games within the last 5 days or so, give or take. The energy level was excellent. The legs of the Panthers, they were just moving. They kept their feet moving, and it showed, especially on the scoring plays. And lastly, in conclusion, I think that is something that the Florida Panthers are going to certainly benefit from, especially with another 2 days off coming up ahead with the next game, Game 6, potential clincher on Tuesday night.
Yeah, we thought the Panthers had the edge in net going into the series. Certainly that has shown itself at this point. Bobrovsky allowed 2 goals on 21 shots, but some key saves. Didn't see a ton of shots overall, especially in the first period, but did make some key saves down the stretch. And now the Oilers have questions. Who will they start in net in Game 6 as they're now pushed to the brink? We will talk about that next here on Locked On NHL Game Night. You just realized your business needs to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps to reach the right candidates faster. If you've been in a spot where you need to hire right away, the pressure's on, and every day without the right person is a setback, that's exactly when Indeed's sponsored jobs come in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. And now you can speed up the hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now. Support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed is all you need. All right, the Oilers. The question we had, would they be able to carry over the momentum from that big 3-goal rally in Game 4 into Game number 5? Unfortunately for them, the answer was no. Calvin Pickard, we talked about it. Chris Knobloch didn't announce who the starting goalie was going to be on Friday. We knew it was going to be Pickard. He was 7-0 at that point. Came on in relief and got the big win. But he allows 4 goals on 18 shots. That's a .778 save percentage in Game number 5. What do you do for the Oilers now for Game number 6? Do you go back to Stuart Skinner or do you stick with Calvin Pickard?
I think you got to go back to Stuart Skinner, and this is no disrespect to Calvin Pickard at all, but his performance did not inspire any sort of confidence for me in terms of now, what do you do in an elimination game? You go back to Calvin Pickard. No, not Calvin Pickard, excuse me. You go back to Stuart Skinner. That's my point. So my reason is very simple, and it's because that, yes, I understand why Calvin Pickard got to start tonight. I even said it in last night's show that Calvin Pickard should, in fact, get the start. That's probably the easiest question that anyone could really ask from the media. And the fact that Chris Knobloch tried to play coy about it, I was like, really, dude? Everybody could have seen that coming. But now, I think that considering that Stuart Skinner, he had a game to sit out, hopefully, and on top of that, he also has two days extra coming up, the off days coming up to reset, be fresh, be ready to go, and hope that they bring the series back to Edmonton for the pinnacle of a Game 7. I think that if you're the Oilers, you got to go back to Stuart Skinner, the man who has helped you get you there, and as well as the fact that, listen, this is the first time in since 7 years where you've had 2 goaltenders who has had at least 7 wins each, in terms of the goaltending tandem and whatnot. So I thought it was really interesting going into tonight in terms of the decision, but now you have to go back to Skinner because the pressure's on Edmonton now. And tonight, between the goaltending not being up to par, but also the struggles defensively, the self-inflicted rule, the critical mistakes that Edmonton made, and there was a lot of them, I think that these next couple of days that they're going to have to do some serious soul searching. But as far as who starts in net, that should be an easy answer. You go back to Stuart Skinner.
I agree. And look, neither one of these guys is going to be a goaltender that's going to lead you to a win. You just hope they play well enough that they can keep you in the games. Stuart Skinner, for all of his warts, he is a guy that has a very strong mental makeup. We've seen him lose his job, get another opportunity, and then make the most of it. So I agree. It is, you do need to go back to Stuart Skinner, but once again, it's not a great situation going on in net for the Edmonton Oilers. I'm going to take our listeners and our viewers behind the curtain a little bit here. Our guy, Nick Zeraris, the host of Locked On Oilers, submitted a little video for us kind of on the fly here. So we're going to see if this works. I hope it does. Let's see if we can check in with our guy, Nick Zeraris.
Sometimes in the National Hockey League, it's just not your night, and tonight was not the Edmonton Oilers' night. Nick Zeraris of Locked On Oilers here after an emotionally devastating Game 5 loss in which the Oilers didn't play a bad game, but Florida was just a modicum better. The Oilers failed to convert on their numerous power play opportunities, and Florida slowly but surely wore them down. I felt this was the first game in this series where the real difference between winning and losing was the difference in the quality of the goaltenders. And that's no knock on Calvin Pickard, who's done an admirable job in relief of Stuart Skinner. But at the same time, Sergei Bobrovsky, multi-Vezina trophy winner, Stanley Cup winner, almost certainly a future Hockey Hall of Famer. The Oilers don't have that in net, and on a night like tonight where there wasn't a lot of room, there wasn't a lot of offense to be had, having that elite goalie would have made a real difference. And you saw a little bit of separation there for the first time in this series. And going back to Sunrise, the Oilers need to win Game 6 to stay alive. If you would like to see the Oilers stay alive, you should check out Locked On Oilers wherever you get your podcasts or over on YouTube.
All right, and thanks to Nick Zeraris. If you were watching, he's in the dark there. I don't know exactly where he was, but it looked like he was maybe in transit somewhere, but we appreciate
That wasn't
him.
in transit. That was standing in the corner of a dark alley.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
That's exactly what it looked like. Don't
know.
ask me how I know, Eddie. I just know.
Okay. All right. I'll take your word for it. No, we appreciate Nick, though, checking in and giving us his thoughts as he talked about the goaltending as well. I think also we mentioned it a little bit, but the power play for Edmonton has got to be better going forward. Now 4 for 23 in the Stanley Cup Finals so far. And again, when you've got the weapons that they have, it's got to be an advantage for you. It certainly wasn't in game number 5. In Game 6, and if there's a Game 7, it needs to be for the Oilers. The power play has got to be there when you've got those two megastars out there on the ice. The other team's only got 4 defenders. You've got to find a way to make that work. They couldn't in Game 5, and it's part of the big reason why they're now trailing in the series. Connor McDavid did get his first goal of the final. Maybe that gets him going, but Leon Draisaitl was silent in this one. He had 1 assist and was a -2. So the big guns for Edmonton McDavid did get a goal, but Draisaitl was silent in this one. And also Matthias Ekholm, their best defensive defenseman, was a -3 in this game. You talk about the defense for the Oilers not being there for him in this one, in particular on the 2 goals that Brad Marchand scored. So certainly there's things that need to be shored up there. But I will say this for the Edmonton Oilers: 7 comeback wins this postseason. Last year, 3 wins in a row to force the Game 7. They've got to win 2 in a row to pull it out this year. So they're capable. But I have to admit too, I thought this was going to go 7, but I thought the way I envisioned this was that the Oilers would win Game 5, the Panthers would win Game 6, and then it would be a coin flip who would win Game 7. That didn't happen. Now you've got the defending Stanley Cup champs being able to close it out on home ice in a Game 6. It's going to be a tall order for the Oilers to try and get it done this time.
No, I agree. And what my thing is, and I have to strongly disagree with Nick when he said that he didn't think that the Oilers didn't play bad. I thought they played horrendous tonight. I thought defensively that they were definitely leaking oil, no pun intended. Sorry, Oiler fans. But then also to make matters worse, I thought that defensively Like, they've had way too many critical mistakes and breakdowns. And not only just that, but I thought that ultimately, like, you needed your guys to step up in terms of, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. You needed a Draisaitl to come through, and as well as penalties. The penalties that they've committed was absolutely damaging in terms of the Oilers and their chances of winning this game. And now, to your point in conclusion, Eddie, now they have to go to Florida and try to stave off elimination and force the ultimate Game 7 back in Edmonton. But this is a really tall order now. Whereas, again, we talked about it earlier, whereas no team has won the Cup since the 2011 Bruins after being down 3-2 in the series. Now, the Oilers are going to be that team to try to add their name to that list for the first team to do that since that 2011 Bruins. But this is going to be difficult. This is going to be very difficult because now I think Florida is looking at this and saying, we smell blood in the water and we're going for the jugular.
If we have a Game 7, Shu and I will be back on Thursday to preview the Game 7, and then Friday we'll be back to recap it if it happens. If we don't have a Game 7, this is our last game night recap show, but we will be doing some shows in the off season. But
Yes.
We both want to thank everyone who has helped make Locked On NHL Game Night a success. We launched it very late in the regular season. We were here through the playoffs. It's been very successful. People have been listening. People have been watching. We really appreciate all you guys supporting the show. And we're already looking forward to doing this for a full NHL season coming up next year. We'll be here. And also our guys, Cam Stewart and Tyler Feldman, recapping every night all the hockey action. So it should be fun. But again, if we have a Game 7, we'll be here to recap it. If not, just wanted to say thanks to everybody for supporting Locked On NHL Game Night. We will now pass the baton to Cam Stewart and Tyler Feldman. They'll be ready to fill you in on what happens in game number 6.
I also want to take the opportunity to say thank you, the listeners and the viewers, because we have seen the numbers. We have seen just like the thousands of viewers and listeners, both on YouTube and as well as wherever you get your podcasts, who have tuned in since this began back on April 6th. We're now almost 2.5 months into this, and this has been an incredible journey. And maybe incredible isn't enough of a strong word for me to use, but I definitely want to, give like a big shout out to Eddie, who working with him has been nothing short of just incredible. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a journey, and as well as Cam Stewart and Tyler Feldman as well, who they have been absolute beasts on their ends as well, helping making this show what it has become in a very short period of time. But don't worry, the off season's coming, the summer is coming. There's going to be a lot to look forward to. But again, we don't know what will happen Game 6. There's a chance it could be the Stanley Cup could be awarded in Game 6 on Tuesday. If it's not, we will be here, God willing, Game 7 Friday night for the last game of the NHL season. But if tonight is the last show we do for the Stanley Cup Finals, so now that we're passing the baton to Tyler and Cam, I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you for making us part of your routine each and every single day you've listened to the show.
All right. I'm Eddie Garcia. He's Shukri Wrights. Thank you for listening and watching Locked On NHL Game Night, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day.